Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your client's peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Hey, hello. Welcome to Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm Chuck Gore, your host, and today I'm joined by Bill Nolan. He's an estate attorney here in Birmingham, Alabama. Bill, thanks for joining us today. Glad to have you on.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, good deal. Well, just to kind of kick things off, tell us why you went to law school in the first place.
Well, I've been a lawyer now for 42 years. I wish I could say that, I had some noble calling to go to law school, like watching Perry Mason or To Kill a Mockingbird or something like that. But the real reason is a lot more mundane than that. I'd never met a lawyer until I went to college. I mean, I never had any interaction, fortunately. Didn't have to be bailed out or whatever while I was in high school. Didn't even know what lawyers did until I went to college.
Right. Okay.
But my college roommate, well, his dad was a lawyer, and we'd go to Jackson, Mississippi to, spend the weekends down there. And he was such a nice guy. He was friendly. He was happy. He was very involved in his kids' lives. He'd take them fishing and hunting, and he interacted with them. He wasn't standoffish. And he was the kind of guy that I thought, that's the kind of guy I'd like to be. He seems successful and happy. My dad was a dentist, and he complained almost every day about how bad it was being a dentist. And certainly I wasn't. And he had the gall to say, how come you don't want to be a dentist? I said, well, Dad, you've been complaining about it for 20 years.
Right.
And, so that's why I went to law school, because I was one lawyer in my life, modeled some behavior, some characteristics that I thought were noble and aspirational. That's how I got to law school.
Man, that's outstanding. Well, after law school, how did you get into the estate planning arena?
Oh, yeah, it's sort of when you look back on it, you think I was headed that way the whole time. But when I first got out of law school, I was practicing general practice of law, which means you take anything that comes in the door. And there's still a lot of lawyers who do that. It might be a DUI and then a divorce and then a bankruptcy.
You're trying to pay your bills at this point.
Yeah, and trying to figure out what exactly it is that you want to do. And in medicine, they make you go through internships, so you figure out what you're good at. But in law school, they don't do that. So you kind of end up doing that on your own. And I learned what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do bankruptcy. I didn't want to do criminal defense. I didn't want to do divorces, DUIs, that kind of thing. What I did enjoy doing was working with seniors who were generous and caring about, leaving the world a better place than maybe they found it. And they had certain struggles that they had to deal with. But in general, it was very pleasing to work with them because they were generous, thoughtful, and wanted to support their kids and grandkids any way they could.
Right. So what does being an attorney in this estate planning arena mean to you?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the area of practice. In the estate planning realm, I started out really working as a director of planned giving in the nonprofit sector. I worked at Birmingham Southern and later for the Episcopal Church Foundation. And in those roles, I was working with wealthier individuals who were older, who wanted to support their charity. So a lot of estate planning tends to be, what can I do with the wealth that I've been fortunate enough to accumulate? Do I want to support my church, a charity, certainly my kids and grandkids? And are there any restrictions or limitations I want to put on those gifts? Used to be taxes were the driver for estate planning, how to minimize estate tax. But these days, 99.9% of us don't have to worry about estate tax. So taxes are not the driver they used to be. It's more, what can we do to take care of you while you're alive? And what can we do to take care of your stuff after you're gone that drives the estate planning decision making? But the other area of practice where we're very, I say big, and the name of the firm is the Alabama Elder Care Law Firm. We work with seniors, and one of the areas is elder law. And elder law is a part of the law that even some lawyers don't know what exactly it is that we do.
Mm-hmm.
That's focused more on getting a senior benefits that they're entitled to, like veterans benefits. A lot of seniors these days are Korean War or Vietnam era veterans, and they're entitled to benefits that they don't know about. So helping them qualify for those benefits is a big part of what we do. Helping people protect their assets from the devastating cost of nursing home care is a big part of what we do. You know, if you ask the typical senior, hey, would you rather your life savings go to pay for nursing home care, or would you rather it go to your kids and grandkids? Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you can imagine what their answer would be, and that's what we try to help them make a reality. The other area of practice is probate, and you know, probate is that area of the law where when a person dies, their estate has to find its way to the new owner or owners, and typically it's the spouse or the kids. But probate is the administrative court supervised process that ensures that your stuff gets to the right people, but creditors get paid first and the taxes get paid and that kind of stuff. It takes about a year from beginning to end, and it can be avoided, but a lot of people don't know how to avoid it. So we help them avoid it if we can. And if they didn't avoid it, we help them go through that process.
Right.
So that just depends, you know, what we're doing. The whole goal is to help people protect and preserve their life savings one way or the other, whether they're middle age or younger and they're doing estate planning and their primary goal is to take care of their kids who are minors, or elder law, how to maximize your income and minimize your expenses, or probate, what can we do to keep the state from collecting more than they're entitled to after you're gone.
I like how you said that, because I talk in generalities, well, estate planning, and I like how you broke it down, because most people, they don't think about it in those terms. Mm-hmm. Estate planning is just for rich people, with trust funds.
Yeah.
And they don't think about these other things.
That's a common misconception, that only rich people need trust, for example. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not so much the amount of your assets as the nature of those assets. Right. Or maybe it's the nature of your particular family dynamic. Do you have kids who have substance abuse problems, or who have a tendency to get married and divorced too many times, or who aren't very responsible with money? Maybe a trust is better. Or if you own property outside of Alabama, a trust is certainly better to avoid probate in 2 or more states. So, right, our goal is, we see it primarily as a teaching responsibility. And if what we say motivates you to action, that's even better. We can help you with that. But our goal is really to raise awareness. But what we've learned is, we work in this area of law that is not DUI, not divorce, not bankruptcy, not criminal defense. So a lot of the people we meet with have never met a lawyer before. They've never been to a lawyer. They have this notion that's been cooked up by television shows about lawyers and what they do. Right. That's about as accurate as Grey's Anatomy or, one of those shows about doctors. They don't know what to expect when they come to a lawyer. So our goal is first to make it as easy as possible for them to sit down and talk and open up. And second, to help them focus on not what we're going to do for them, but let's see what your challenges are. And then we'll present you with the tools you need to meet those challenges. The tool might be a will, it might be a trust. The tools are defined by the job at hand. And
right.
It's not a one size fits all kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I like how you said that. Once you have a plan, different tools are used for different things. So we have all the tools that you need. And the expense too. When I talk to somebody, they're like, well, if I have to go see an estate attorney for something, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah. I'll give you this example. That people think a will is going to cost a lot of money. It costs 10 times what a will would cost to go through probate without a will.
Right.
So are you really saving money by avoiding a will? It's going to be 10 times more if you die without one than if you die with one. So why in the world would you put that on your spouse and kids if you could help?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not as expensive as it is not having one.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's what I try to tell them. So, Well, how did you get to this firm?
I founded this firm back in 2006 when I was leaving the nonprofit sector, the Episcopal Church Foundation in New York. I thought, well, I'm going to go back into the practice of law. And I was really, at that time, attracted to the elder law section specifically, not simply estate planning. And I called some of my friends in Birmingham who were elder law attorneys and said, what do you think? Will the will the market support one more? And they said, well, maybe so. What they weren't like welcome in, but they weren't saying absolutely not. So
yeah, they didn't want to invite their a competitor
yeah,
in,
yeah.
for sure.
So I hung up a shingle. Nolan Elder Law and Estate Planning was the name of the firm then. And over the time, I've been fortunate enough to hire a couple of other lawyers who were younger than me and who will be here longer than me. Although I don't have any intentions of leaving anytime soon. People, the first time somebody asked me, this was years ago, they said, what's going to happen when you retire? And I'd never even thought about that.
Yeah.
It's like when you get that first letter from AARP, you're officially, that's how I felt. Like I was old now. So
Right.
I want to make sure people know that, yes, I'm, not as young as I used to be, but I do have a 35-year-old and a 50-year-old lawyer here who are very good at what they do, and they know exactly how to handle things, and they're going to be around for quite some time after I'm gone. And who knows, we may have more lawyers than that before I'm gone. Hope so.
That's great. Bring on as many as you can.
Yeah.
I remember that when my first client asked me, what happens when you retire? I was like, I've never thought about retirement. I'm never going to retire because I love what I do and I love helping people. So I could do this the rest of my life. But they were like, well, what happens if you get killed in a car wreck? I was like, well, okay, we'll have that conversation.
There's a saying, there's no such thing as a retired lawyer. And that's probably true. I mean, it's rare that you ever run into a lawyer who says, I used to practice law. It's usually like they go from 40 hours a week to 20 hours a week to 15 hours a week to 10 hours a week. They never completely
right
in the practice of law.
Right. I'm never going to retire, in the true sense of the word. So, well, doing this for so long, I know this, it is might not be a great question, but what's an ideal, client for you?
Yeah. Again, I think it boils down to the practice area. We always ask people.
Right, in those three different areas.
What led you to call us? And by the way, were you referred to us by anybody? Because we want to thank financial advisors, bankers, other lawyers, CPAs for referring their clients to us. But usually people will give us a ballpark idea. They might say, especially with elder law, they might say, well, my mom and dad are in their 80s, and I'm not sure what to do. They're pretty private, but I have noticed that they're slipping, that there's some dents on dad's car that weren't there before, and maybe they forgot to pay some bills and they've gotten some notices from the bank, or maybe the house isn't being kept up as well as possible. And I'm worried that they need more help than they will admit. What can I do? That's a typical elder law question. Sometimes it's even worse. Dad's being taken advantage of by a scammer, a con man, and we want to cut them off from dad and mom and as soon as we can. Or it might be dad died and mom's lived in the same house that I grew up in, and it used to be a good neighborhood, but it's not so good anymore. And I want her to move in with me, but she won't hear of it. And what can I do to make mom move? Something like that.
Okay.
With the estate planning, it's usually people will call and say, well, we have an old will that's 30 years old and our kids weren't born then, and now they're adults and we have grandkids and we've moved a couple of times, and the people we named as executor or predeceased us, and we need to update our wills. That's a classic. Or we are 80 and it's about time that we had a will. I've heard that before too. I'm thinking, well, I'm glad you came to see. You never know when you might need one.
Right.
So, and then with probate, it's always, they've lost somebody and now they need help with this confusing process that they've heard about called probate, and don't even know where to start there. So it just depends on the practice area, who the ideal is. And we always let people know, I'm sorry, that's not an area we can work in, but here's somebody to call. That's what they do. That comes up with veterans work with service-connected disability. That's a big deal. And we don't do service-connected disability, so we refer people to the Friedman firm, which is a local firm, does nothing but service-connected disability.
I know we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but what are some of the misconceptions that are out there?
Yeah, I think
in this arena.
Expense. People are worried that it's really expensive. And, there's certain areas of the law that can be expensive. You could really group lawyers into two categories. those who get you out of trouble that you're in and those who keep you out of trouble in the first place.
That's a great way to put it. I've never heard somebody put it that way, but that is perfect.
The lawyers who get you out of trouble would be a criminal defense lawyer, DUI, things like that, or a divorce lawyer, or a bankruptcy attorney. They're going to charge you money because it's crisis mode. Right. They're trying to save you. Our goal is to keep you out of trouble. So our fees tend to be not nearly as high as, say, a divorce or criminal defense lawyer. And the way we do things here is a little different than other law firms. We do everything we can possibly do on a fixed fee basis. So we don't charge to meet with people. They come in free of charge. And when we listen to their problem, their story, the challenges, we present them with a fee sheet that's printed up, and it's not something we just make up. It's right there in a laminated sheet. And it says, this is how much we charge for an estate plan for an individual or for a couple, or this is what we charge for a revocable living trust plan or a Medicaid asset protection trust or a deed or whatever. So people can see that's what it'll cost me. And they can walk out the door knowing that's going to be their expense. It's not going to be some hourly rate that might not end forever or a percentage that they don't know what that's going to ultimately be. They know exactly when they leave here what it's going to cost them.
Yeah, I see that's very common. People, lawyers are expensive. I'm not going to call a lawyer. Well, it's going to cost you more in the long run. Just at least know, make an educated decision.
It's like that old oil change commercial with that mechanic saying, you can pay me now or you can pay me later.
Yes.
You can use decent oil now or you can pay me for an engine change later. It's your choice.
Right.
And we try to keep it. We understand that people aren't, just rolling in money, and this is not an expense they want to have to incur. But we also want people to understand this is the way we make a living, and law school and 42 years of experience has got to count for something.
Right. Well, you've been at this for a long time, so I'm sure we could have spend a month talking about this. But tell us a story of how something went wrong for a client, or maybe somebody that wasn't a client that maybe could have been avoided.
Well, one that comes to mind is she is a woman who I have worked with professionally here in town. She was a divorcee. She had two minor kids, and she met a gentleman, and they struck up a relationship, and they decided to get married. He had kids. He was divorced. He had kids who his ex-wife had custody of those kids, and the woman I know had custody of her kids, and she owned her own home. She got that in the divorce. And so her new spouse was a contractor of some sort, an electrician or plumber, something or other, worked out of the back of his truck. Basically, he found a nice foreclosure that was not far from where they were living. And he said, why don't I buy this foreclosure? It's bigger and all of us could move in together and I'll fix it up real nice. So a couple of years go by, he's been working on the weekends, and they end up selling her house and paying down the mortgage or the construction loan on the new house. And they move in together, and everybody's happy. And they decide to go on a honeymoon. And while they're on the honeymoon, the husband drops dead, and he wasn't old. So when she comes back to town, she realizes, well, we didn't have an estate plan. We didn't get a will. We didn't have a power of attorney or anything. My husband didn't have me added to his company bank account. I'm not on his company credit cards. I'm not on his company LLC.
Right. Man.
I don't know who owes money to him, and I don't know who he owes money to. So I can't sell any of this equipment because it might be financed. And then the worst part is she finds out that she's on the mortgage to the new house, but she's not on the deed to that new house. He had purchased the deed, purchased the house, to do construction.
Right.
Wasn't on the original purchase. And the lender didn't add her to the deed. They just added her to the mortgage. So she was on the hook for 100% of the loan, but only, as the surviving spouse, 50% of the house. The other 50% goes to his children, who were not her children, his children who were living with his ex-wife. So that was a mess. that was a real mess. And it could have been avoided,
Sure.
if they had a meeting, done a will, looked at the deed, added her to the deed, all of that could have been avoided, but they didn't know. And these things happen. People just don't think about it. They're too in love to think about what could happen if either of them died.
Right. They don't know. They don't understand.
They don't know.
Yeah.
They just don't know.
Mhm.
So our goal is to help people avoid things like that.
Right.
We can.
And that's very avoidable, easily managed.
And not expensive. It really isn't an
Yeah.
expensive process either.
Good. Well, the pain of that expense that she went through, there's
Yeah.
the expenses setting it up and doing it.
Just having to deal with the ex-wife and all of that was a nightmare, not to mention the legal system and the title company and the lender and all that stuff.
Well, tell us about one that on the other end of the spectrum that went well.
This comes up from time to time. It's not just one example, but it comes up from time to time. It was probably a decade ago where we had done a trust for these two adult women for their parents. Mom and dad were in their 80s, and we set up a trust for mom and dad to move all of their assets into, so dad could qualify for the veterans pension benefit, which was, a couple of $1,000 a month.
Mhm.
And mom and dad could later qualify for Medicaid benefits without having to spend down all of these assets that were in the trust, because the trust, had been in force for more than 5 years. So we did this trust, worked for him probably 2011. And we get a call a couple of years ago, and they said, we just wanted to let you know everything worked exactly the way you said it would work. We got dad's veterans benefits. He lived on those until he died. Mom got the benefits after he died. We had to put her in a nursing home, but we could get her on Medicaid immediately because of all the assets in the trust. The money in the trust was used to supplement her care. And after she's gone, we avoided probate because she didn't have anything. It was all in the trust. It just went the two of us outright. So I just wanted to say thank you. It worked great. So that does come up from time to time.
That is outstanding.
Yeah. It works just like we said it would work.
Right. But that's one of the things too that people ask is, they assume everything's going to work. So a competent estate attorney that specializes in this area, you don't know it's going to work till the event happens.
Yeah.
So
we do this quite often, so we know what works and what doesn't work, and have a pretty good idea about what Medicaid will allow and won't allow, and what VA will allow and won't allow, so we can help them with the benefit of our experience.
Well, being in this business for a while,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of challenges do you face? And is there one that's bigger than the others?
Oh gosh, yeah. Making the thing I hate is when people say, I wish somebody had told me that before now. That all the time. And I'm out there speaking at churches and civic groups and senior centers and, talking about Medicaid planning and veterans benefits and probate and all this stuff, talking about you have to do this work in advance. You can't wait until, you need it to do the planning, because then it's too late. And I'm talking to seniors, I'm talking to their kids. By kids, I mean the 40 or 50-year-old kids,
Mm-hmm.
Messaging is it. We can talk till we're blue in the face, and either the wrong people are hearing the message, or we're not being very clear and concise, because we still meet with people who say, I wish somebody had told me that before now.
That I hear that often.
If I could afford the billboards that Shannara has, I could put that up there on all these billboards up and down I-65.
Mm-hmm.
Which, but I can't. I don't have $6 million to spend billboards every year.
I know, getting the messaging, and I do it often, because I work a lot in the organized labor field, and I speak to these labor unions, and it's like, it's just like beating your head against the wall, and you tell them this and tell them this, and then they don't take any action, and then something happens. It'd take 5 minutes, if you were just to call me, shoot me an email, all this could have been taken care of.
And it's funny because we plan virtually everything else in our life.
Mm-hmm.
You start planning for retirement from that very first paycheck with a little bit of money going to your 401k, even though you're not going to need it for 30 years. And then you plan your vacation months in advance, every detail, where you're going to stay, where you're going to drive to, what you're going to spend on hotels and entertainment and restaurants and all that. And if you've ever been involved in planning a wedding, you know it's like planning the D-Day invasion. You've got to hire florists and caterers and venues,
Right.
photographers and
Uh-huh.
dresses and tuxes. And then you've got the venue for the wedding and the venue for the reception. It's like huge. You couldn't just say, let's go out and get married and have 300 of our closest friends show up. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, and then we plan, for retirement during our, we're going to play pickleball and we're going to travel a lot, blah, blah. But very few people plan from their retirement date to their date of their funeral. And a lot of stuff can happen, in that time.
Amen. Yeah.
And not of it's good, not all of it's good by any means. So we ought to be thinking about calling that interval between retirement and funeral something, what you would call it, but we ought to have planning for that period that is not just about money, which is important, but about taking care of our spouses, taking care of our families, qualifying for benefits. And then there's a whole aspect of retirement that I'm really fascinated with that has nothing to do with money. It's all about the changing dynamics between the spouses when all of a sudden you have all this time on your hand, or you're home for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and your wife's used to you being gone 40 hours a week.
Right.
Are you going to get on each other's nerves? Are you going to lose your identity because you're no longer the doctor that everybody respects or the lawyer that everybody reveres? How are you going to compensate for that?
Right.
Anyway, that's something I'm always thinking about, trying to figure out how I can put together a seminar or something on that subject.
That's a great idea because that's important to everyone, because you're right. Most people, they'll spend more time planning their daggum summer vacation than they do their retirement.
Yeah.
People will call me, hey, I'm retiring next month. I'm like, well, okay. Have you put a plan together? No, I don't know. I got, some money in my 401k. I got a pension. What do I do? Well, let's take a step back, and then you're right. Once they do pull the trigger, can they pull the trigger? If everything's in place, make sure it's done right. But you're right, from when they pull the trigger till they go into the grave, that can be a long time.
It can be.
And the number one thing is you have to have something to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to have friends and family and something to do.
Yeah.
Money is secondary.
It really is. We don't spend nearly as much on food and clothing as we did when we were younger and working. And so those expenses go down. Healthcare expenses go way up.
Mm-hmm.
Living expenses can go down when the house is paid for and you only have one car, things like that. But medical expense is the biggest single expense, and you got to have something in place for that, for sure.
You got to prepare for that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like best about what you do? I know you've not hinted about it, but you've talked about how the education, and is that what you like the best, being able to really educate people?
I like the education. I like speaking to people and public speaking and getting out there and raising awareness and making people think about maybe some things that they weren't comfortable thinking about, or maybe thinking about things that they just hadn't crossed their mind to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Educating people, not just people, but younger lawyers. It's a lot of fun. I like practicing law. I like doing the drafting and all that, but it's always exciting, to get in front of a crowd because you don't know what to expect, what questions you're going to be asked, or what challenges you might be presented with while you're up there. So,
right.
Almost like being at a trial in a way. They're the jury out there. You're talking to them.
Right. Well, Bill, man, it's been great talking with you today. Is there anything that you can add that we didn't touch on that you think, is important that people should know about?
Well, I think we have these things we call red flag moments in life, and people don't think about them, but they should be moments that spur you to action. For example, your mom falls, breaks her hip, goes to the hospital, maybe comes down with pneumonia. They release her to rehab, and she's in rehab for 3 weeks, and then she comes home, and everybody's breathing a big sigh of relief. Everything's going to be back to normal again. Mom's going to be good as new. It's never going to be the same. It may look the same, but it's never going to be the same. Mm-hmm. That should be a moment where you say, Mom, you're mortal. We need to explore what to do so that we can take care of you and make sure that all of your financial documents are in place. Make sure we know who you're working with. Make sure all your legal documents are in place so that we can step in when the time comes. Or maybe mom and dad are living together and dad dies. That's a red flag moment. Or when a parent moves from home to assisted living. That's a red flag moment. It's not just something that everybody has to deal with sooner or later, and now it's our turn. It should be a reminder that let's explore this. Let's see what else we need to be thinking about, because we're living in the moment. But if there's something we should be planning for now that's not going to take place until next year or 5 years out, we want to be ready when it happens. And that's what we help people understand, is how to plan well in advance of a challenge cropping up. As far as getting in touch with us, hey, we're on Highway 280, but not the bad part of Highway 280. We're on the part of Highway 280 between Lakeshore and Hollywood Boulevard, it's really the Mountain Brook area.
Right.
It's not far from, I can't think of the name of that restaurant. It's right around the corner, but we're in the Brick Tops. Yeah, we're not far from Brick Tops, if you know where.
Across street from where the old Mountain Brook Inn used to be.
Well, actually, on the same side of 280 is.
Oh, that's right.
Office Park is the oldest office park in the country, by the way. People don't realize that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was spawned here in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places. So Office Park is the oldest office park in the country. There's the old part, which is on the right side of 280 going towards town. The newer part, which is what we're in, is on the left side. Our website, you can reach us through our website. It's elderlawalabama.com. We have a lot of blog posts, a lot of articles you can read things on without having to talk to us. You can educate yourself if you like to.
Right.
You can ask questions. We don't charge anything to answer questions online. And we have some videos on there if you want to watch a video. We have bios of all the lawyers and directions on how to get here. And of course, you can even call us if you like to reach out the old-fashioned
way.
Yeah. So the number is 390-0101 and
205, correct?
205-390-0101. Mackenzie will be the person you get on the phone. She answers the phone for us, and she's the coordinator. She's the traffic cop here. You may want to meet with Valerie or meet with Jennifer, or maybe need to meet with me, but she'll get you in the right place.
Well, very good. Well, thanks for joining us today, Bill. It was a pleasure to have you on.
It's always fun to get a chance to talk about what we do, and hopefully somebody will be motivated to call us. So I appreciate you doing all this. Really
Absolutely.
Nice of you. Let us know if we can help in any way. Happy to do so.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.